And now we come to the most important of all of the diatheses, and this is the Lipaemic Diathesis. Its primary nurture points are the cardiovascular and skeletal system. This is identified by either a total or partial corneal arcus, and there are increased risk factors if the sign develops before the age of 40. What is this? What does the sign look like? And why is it called a corneal arcus? There are many authorities on iridology and many textbooks have been written, and this particular sign has been given a range of names including cholesterol ring, mineral ring, calcium ring, arcus senilis, sodium ring, ring of determination, and the arcus lipoides. So there are many names for this white ring. It is actually lipid accumulation that is found in the peripheral corneal stroma, Bowman's membrane, and the perilimbal region of the sclera. So the accumulation actually sits above the iris, underneath the cornea, and is correctly referred to as a corneal sign. It's not actually a sign on the iris, it is a sign on the cornea. This diathesis is found in all other constitutional types, and it is primarily genetic. However, it can also be acquired, and once present, will never be removed. So it is a permanent feature. The brain is unforgiving and has given this whitish imprint to the bearer as a permanent reminder of the mismanagement that led to its development and what it indicates. If this diathesis develops, it becomes the major nurture point for the individual. And the reason for that is because of what it represents. And in most cases, it represents damage to the vascular system. And we already have discussed previously that approximately 1/3 of all deaths in the Western world are attributed to cardiovascular accidents. The age of the client at the time of development has major implications. The usual age for it to emerge is after the age of 50. And in this instance, there is a high possibility of raised blood lipids. The association between the arcus and a high lipid profile diminishes with age. So the majority of people are going to develop this when they're around about 50. And in such cases, if you check their lipid profile, you're likely to find elevated blood lipids. But as they get older, say if they were 60 or 65 when they develop this lipaemic diathesis, it's possible that their lipid profile will be in the normal range, but they'll have skeletal issues. However, development of this arcus in clients under the age of 40 has very serious implications, including vascular and liver pathologies, diabetes mellitus, and a disposition to develop cancer. If you look at this corneal arcus, it's white, and we've learned in many previous lessons that white is an indication of inflammation. And the first stage of any disease is inflammation. It's the body's response to try and repair what's going wrong. Joseph Deck referred to this sign, if developed under the age of 40, as a non-specific precancerous disposition. It's also interesting to note the role that dramatic dietary change can have on the iris template. I've noticed personally that particularly Asians who abandon their cultural diet in favour of the so-called Western diet develop the corneal arcus rapidly, some as young as 30, even though their parents had no evidence of this sign. And we've seen an exponential growth of cancer and heart disease in Asian groups since the so-called Westernization of Asia over the last few decades. So they had a traditional diet that they followed for many thousands of years, where they had high use of rice with vegetables, and occasionally they would have small amounts of chicken or fish. And various diseases that plague Western society were virtually unknown in their culture. But since introducing the golden arches and fast foods and chicken takeouts and ice cream and the junk food that we've been so used to, they have become statistically pretty much the same as their Western friends. The change to eating high quantities of meat and potatoes has really taken its toll. So we'll have another look. So we've got here a mixed lipemic. Previously we had a lymphatic glandular lipemic, so lymphatic colour, glandular structure, Lipaemic diathesis. Mixed lipemic, another mixed lipemic, and another mixed lipemic. The first question I always ask when a person has a Lipaemic diathesis is, do you have a parent who had this white ring around their eyes? A very high percentage, maybe as high as 80%, will say yes. So it is possible that you can develop the Lipaemic diathesis, and it's a disposition rather than being personally active. Here we've got a hematogenic colour, glandular structure, and a Lipaemic diathesis. Common complaints include circulation disturbances, high blood cholesterol or triglyceride, disturbances of the blood pressure, fatty or hardened arteries, and other cardiovascular involvement, particularly vascular. Symptoms from poor circulation can include cold extremities, failing short-term memory and concentration. Hypothyroidism can also be indicated by this. It can cause a faulty mineral economy, which can lead to calcification in the joints and tissues. So this is to do with parathyroid influence on metabolism of calcium. This can cause a variety of aches and pains, including rheumatics and arthritis. And the liver is the second primary organ involved in the development of this diathesis. I was involved in a research study with one of the universities here in Australia to examine the anterior eye, and the professor that was behind this study was actually looking at the fundus, or the back of the eye, via the pupil, for signs that would indicate a disposition to diabetes. And he invited me to look at the anterior eye to see what I could see. And I did an Excel sheet with all the signs that I felt would be indicated in the eyes for people who were diabetic. And it was a double-blind study, so I didn't have any statistics on age, gender, whether or not they had diabetes or what type of diabetes they actually had. I just had to look at the eyes and give an opinion. And the results were actually quite shocking to me. I really did not expect to get the findings that I did. In amongst my research points, I'd listed things like lacuna on the pancreatic quadrant, like bridged or squared collarettes, like orange pigmentation, like random pigments, and so on. I listed all these things, and I just put notes next to each of the eyes I did according to what they had. Now, what was amazing was how many of the subjects had a corneal arcus. And we now know that a corneal arcus is a very common sign in people with diabetes mellitus in particular. At the end of the study, it was revealed to me that of the 70 plus people that I had looked at, 40 of them were diabetic, All of them were over 70, and all of them that were diabetic had type 1 insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So it made me rethink the way that I view the iris, and also the fact that diabetes mellitus is a different diabetes to type 2 diabetes. So when you see a corneal arcus, don't just think cardiovascular. You need to also think of the possibilities, including thyroid issues, liver problems, and the possibility of diabetes. When you think of the relationship between the pancreas and the impact that diabetes has on our blood vessels, it's not really a surprise that a sign that can also indicate the health of our blood vessels would be associated with diabetes. In the textbook on page 114, you've got a subheading there, the tendency and predisposition of lipemic diathesis. And these include raised blood lipids, cholesterol, triglycerides, lipoprotein, and homocysteine, premature arteriosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, metabolic disorders of the liver, bile ducts, and pancreas, produces poor selection, digestion, utilization, and elimination of fats. We've also got lipid peroxidation, foam cell formation in response to arterial wall damage, fatty degeneration of cells in organs and organ systems, including the heart, liver, skin, connective tissue, damage to artery walls by pathogens, chemicals, or toxins. Erythrocyte or thrombocyte aggregation produces thick, sticky blood. And lipid peroxidation with or without high blood lipids. So this is from mainstream medicine. So medical doctors recognize the corneal arcus as a sign associated with the vascular system. Occasionally, you're going to see a partially formed arc, such as we have here. This is a superior corneal arcus. This is one of my students, and she was really quite distressed when she found out that she had this, because her mother suffered with dementia, and she was so afraid that maybe this was going to happen to her as well. And another thing that particularly distressed this person is that she was in her mid-40s and already had this corneal arcus. So it was scary for her to actually listen to the lesson, see the sign in her own eye, and relate that to her family history. The upper arcus indicates cerebral symptoms, including short-term memory loss, depression, poor concentration, and headaches. And very dense examples have been noted in people suffering with dementia. However, it is not a sign exclusive to dementia. I've seen people who have this sign in a significant way and yet still have good cognitive abilities. And I've also seen people with dementia who did not have this sign. However, we need to think of the zone in which we see the arcus, because it really is a sign relative to the blood vessels in the particular region. And if it is located only in the cerebral area, then we have to consider the possibility that there's been a change in the dynamics of the blood vessels in that region. So for this person, I would recommend that they do some kind of mental interactive work every day, like a crossword or Sudoku, one of those strategy games, because if we don't use it, we can lose it. We can also have a lower corneal arcus, or inferior. We have superior, which is the upper one. Now we've got inferior, which is the lower one. And the lower arcs concern circulation to the legs. The symptoms likely to be produced include tired, aching legs, pain and stiffness in the muscles and joints, and intermittent claudication. This is pain in your calves when you walk. They're also likely to be suffering with cold or burning feet. Cold feet are due to peripheral constriction, But burning feet are associated with poor venous return. So we've got the heart that pushes the blood down to our lower extremities, but then the muscles in our legs and in our blood vessels are responsible to return that blood back to the heart. So sometimes one of the symptoms associated with burning feet is that the client will say that they hang their feet out of the covers at night to cool them down. This is a sure sign not of too much circulation. This is a sure sign that their circulation has been impaired. Now, if you get an example where you've got a partial upper and a partial lower arc, we have to combine the meaning of those two. So, poor circulation in the head region, poor circulation in the feet. And actually, we do say cold head, cold feet. What about a midsection arcus? Here we've got a medial corneal arcus, and this is actually not bilateral, it's just in one iris. So we would say that this disposition is probably coming from the mother's side of the family. Always remember to ask that. So when we've got a midsection arcus, it can involve either medial or lateral presentations. So in this case, he's actually got a complete ring, but you notice that it is denser on the lateral side. Have you noticed that many of them have got significant sclera signs as well? We'll be talking about the sclera in a later module. So we've seen a medial corneal arcus, and now we're looking at a lateral corneal arcus. And again, this person has it in one eye only. So what does a midsection arc reveal? Lateral or medial suggests an issue involving either the heart or the lungs. Clients with this sign often complain about the sensation of banding across their chest. So if they went for a walk up the stairs, for example, they'd feel compression in their chest, feeling like they can't quite get their breath. And since the arcus can also indicate sclerosis, a midsection arc, particularly one located laterally in the left iris, is often associated with angina. So the question begs, how are we going to get these people to be the best version of them possible? And of course, I'm sure you've already guessed that we're going to choose the diet that's right for their colour type. That's to start with. But there are some additional notes. The diet should have an emphasis on keeping the blood vessels clean. So it should be kept low in saturated fats, which are going to exclude red meat and full cream dairy products. We need to suggest that they eliminate all heated oil and fried foods, since this actually makes the fats rancid and changes the makeup of the fats. When we heat oil or fry food, we actually increase trans fatty acids, and that's not going to be healthy for anyone, but particularly not going to be healthy for anyone who has a compromised vascular system. Reduce the intake of inorganic minerals such as common table salt and dolomite. Celtic salt or Himalayan salt is rich in a blend of natural minerals that are actually nourishing for the cardiovascular system. Eat plenty of fresh fruit and vegetables to maintain a high level of fibre. And a vegan diet is ideal, but small white fish is a good source of animal protein for non-vegetarians. Include some regular low-impact exercise for 10 to 20 minutes a day, 2 to 6 days a week, based on age and physical ability. Constitutional supplements: water-soluble vitamin E, thiamine, and CoQ10 are excellent choices for this person. Take a teaspoon of flaxseed oil and lecithin granules or capsules with breakfast, and keep the bowels regular with a bulk-forming laxative such as psyllium. You might want to include a liver tonic also. So something like globe artichoke or St. Mary's thistle will help to reduce serum lipids. Cardiovascular specifics include hawthorn and ginkgo biloba. And there was a study that demonstrated one dose of vitamin E, 400 international units, with a multivitamin and mineral supplement every day reduced cardiovascular risk in predisposed clients by up to 65% after 1 year of regular supplementation. So what they did in that study, they actually tracked people for 20 years. They had a control group. They had a group who only took vitamin E and a group that took 1 vitamin E and 1 multivitamin a day. And what they found was that the vitamin E only group had a 40% reduction in the general trend of cardiovascular accidents, but the group that took the vitamin E and the multivitamin had a 65% reduction in cardiovascular accidents compared to the control group. So if you've got any of these signs, if you've got, regardless of which sort of ARCUS you have, and you're related to somebody who had cardiovascular issues, to be safe, take 1 vitamin E and 1 multivitamin per day and lower your risk factors. The level of magnesium in the blood correlates with the ability of the heart muscle to manufacture enough energy to beat properly. It is found to prevent arrhythmia. It improves heart function in cardiomyopathy, and it also relieves mitral valve prolapse. And they also found that magnesium is the most common deficiency in all people suffering with cardiac impairment. So let's just recap. A lipaemic diathesis is comprised of a total or partial corneal ARCUS. And there are increased risk factors if this sign develops before the age of 40. People with eyes like this are related to people who've had circulation disturbances, including high blood lipids, disturbed blood pressure, fatty or hardened arteries, and reduced peripheral circulation. Failing short-term memory and concentration is often the first symptom. Poor metabolism of dietary fat is involved. So the liver is the second primary organ involved in the development of this diathesis. The thyroid can cause faulty mineral economy and contribute to the development of arthritis and rheumatics. So don't forget that this constitutional type is associated not only with cardiovascular issues, but also with arthritis. Part of the wellness profile should include the suggestion that they spend some quality time with their grandchildren. Get them to tell their grandchildren stories about their parents, and also recommend that they focus on today rather than yesterday. Their lesson is to love yourself, and the love you crave from others will flow to you naturally. We'll talk about the lipaemic personality in our Iris 2 section. So again, to recap, we're going to keep them well by using the diet for their primary colour, and we're going to emphasise keeping the blood vessels clean by keeping the diet low in saturated fats from red meat and full cream dairy products. And we're going to eliminate all heated oil and fried food. We're going to recommend that they reduce the intake of inorganic minerals such as common table salt and dolomite, which is just chalk. There's no nutrition in dolomite. It's good for plants. Celtic or Himalayan salt is rich in a blend of natural minerals that are actually nourishing for the cardiovascular system. We want to encourage them to eat plenty of fresh fruit and vegetables to maintain a high level of fibre. Small white fish and free-range poultry are good sources of animal protein for non-vegetarians. Because liver function is compromised in people who have this diathesis, We're going to recommend a water-soluble vitamin E, which will be much easier for them to uptake. Also thiamine and CoQ10. Take a teaspoon of flaxseed oil and lecithin granules or capsules with breakfast. Keep the bowels regular with a bulk-forming laxative such as psyllium. Use a liver tonic such as globe artichoke or St Mary's thistle to help reduce serum lipids. And hawthorn and ginkgo biloba are both good for the circulatory system. Of course, we're going to suggest that they include some regular low-impact exercise. And the last thing is we want to recommend that they organise a full cardiovascular workup by their GP to assess blood pressure, pulse rate, cholesterol and triglyceride, and homocysteine levels. Before we finish, we want to do a little bit of revision. So again, can you name these diatheses? Top left, did you select hydrogenic? Can you remember the features of the hydrogenic? Multiple tophi near the ciliary border. It's not unusual, sometimes we do also find white tophi in this humeral zone. And can you remember what this diathesis indicates? If you said regulation of the fluid systems in the body, that is both water and lymphatic, then you've got that right. How about the top middle diathesis? Which one do you think this is? Did you say hypoplastic? And what are the features of the lymphatic hypoplastic? Do you remember that in particular it's the lymphatic cords or runners that join the outer periphery with the humeral zone? Do you also remember that the humeral zone is often coloured and it's not unusual to see random pigmentation? And what are the features of this diathesis as far as dispositions go? Do you recall that this is about a nutritional deficiency at the cellular level? And remember that their primary nurture points are the elimination organs and the immune system. What do you call the diathesis top right? Did you say dyscratic? And what are the identifying features belonging to the dyscratic? You should have said multiple pigmentation layers, lymphatic cords, and perhaps a central heterochromia. And what does the dyscratic diathesis indicate? If your answer was disturbances within the connective tissue, blood, and lymph, and that the primary nurture points involve elimination and the immune system, you got that right. If we look at the bottom left, what do we call this diathesis? Did you say miasmic? And what are the identifying features that we look for to determine a miasmic constitution? Did you remember that the primary sign is multiple large random pigments with an iris that displays good resilience elsewhere? And do you recall that one of the major features of this particular diathesis is they have a repetition of symptoms in spite of an initial good reaction to the treatment offered? And the last diathesis, what do we call that? Did you say lipemic? And how do we identify a lipemic diathesis? I hope you answered a total or partial corneal arcus. And if I was to ask you, what is the major disposition with this particular diathesis, what would you say? I hope you mentioned circulation disturbances, cardiovascular symptoms. Did you remember that the liver is the second primary organ involved in the development of this diathesis? And it also indicates arthritic tendencies and is frequently seen in diabetics. How did you go? One last question. Which diathesis out of all 11 diatheses, which one takes precedence over all others and becomes the primary nurture point regardless of any other constitutional diathesis that you may have? Your answer should have been the lipemic. Really, if you develop a lipemic diathesis, this is the one you need to take care of most, since it can possibly claim your life. I really hope that you've enjoyed the constitutional aspects of iridology. In my opinion, constitutional iridology is the most dynamic, the most revealing, the most important part of physical iridology. In fact, I can't imagine myself being an iridologist if I didn't have this as my first assessment tool. Integrated iridology constitutional analysis enables you to define personal background, the ideal diet. The structure shows us how people act and interact as they interface with their world. And lastly, the diatheses show me what is the major area that I need to take care of and what is the major issue for this client sitting in front of me. What is their pathway to disease? And I've learned all of this by a quick glance at their eyes. I really hope that you take this on board, you study it well, become familiar with it, and that it will open up so much more to you about your clients. Your work as an iridologist is to help your clients be the best version of themselves that they can be. If you look for the worst in an iris, you'll find it. If you look for the best in an iris, you'll find it. What kind of practitioner are you going to be? Regardless of what you find, always try to make it positive. People love good feedback and encouragement. By now you already know that you can't change what you've already got in your eye. So it's a matter of knowing what suits me best and then doing that. Treasure eyes for what they reveal, and remember to tell people whether they produce the best case